Thank you, Jonathan, and Sabah al Khair, a late good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session. My name is Ferdinand Gierke. I work for Brot for the World, as already mentioned. We are the development agency of the Protestant churches of Germany, and I work as a climate change advisor for the Middle East. I'm proud to have here today with me on the panel my esteemed colleagues from SEOS, the Coptic Evangelical Organization for Social Services, a renowned Christian development organization from Egypt working with more than 1 million people every year. Allow me to quickly introduce my fellow panelists. To my left is Ms. Margaret Sarofim, Director for Local Development. She's working for SEOS since 1990 and leads a unit of 120 dedicated staff with equitable food systems and resource conservation being major topics of her work. She furthermore represents SEOS in the Egyptian National Alliance for Civil Development Work. Next up is Ms. Heba Yusri, Local Interfaith Dialogue Forum Programs Manager, also working in SEOS since the early 90s. Heba currently manages the Interfaith Dialogue Program in various Egyptian governorates, which includes capacity building programs for, amongst others, religious leaders, in order to equip them as agents for change in their communities. To her left is Ms. Rania Rashad, Senior Funding Manager, who was throughout her long time also with SEOS involved in programs pertaining to agriculture, rural development, food security and environment. Rania leads SEOS funding team. And last but not least, I'm happy to introduce Mr. Maged Boulos, Deputy Manager for Rural Development in Upper Egypt. In his past 23 years of experience in working with local small-scale farmers, he has become an expert in community organization and locally led adaptation to climate change. Thank you. So, faith, climate education, climate adaptation, interfaith dialogue, preservation of natural resources, food security, a lot of topics to cover in only 45 minutes. But since SEOS is working on all of them on a daily basis, this session is trying to do things a bit differently than other panels by really going practical. So my colleagues will provide practical examples and learnings that join all of these topics together with a hope to inspire discussion and dialogue. So to that end, there will also be a room for your exchange with the panelists towards the end of the session. And as two of my colleagues feel more comfortable speaking in Arabic, my colleague Orania will translate for us. Thus, without further ado, I would like to give my first question to Ms. Margrit. That is, as a faith-based organization, are you facing at the faith-based organization working in Egypt, what are the values which underpin your work for climate justice? And what does climate justice mean for you and SEOS, actually?
Thank you, Ferdinand, and thank you for all of you, and good morning for all of you from Egypt. So first, I would like to introduce very quickly what is SEOS. SEOS is a Coptic Evangelical Organization for Social Services established in 1952 in Egypt by the late Reverend Dr. Samuel Habib and led now by Dr. Reverend Andrea Zaki Estefanos. The story of our organization started by the late Dr. Samuel Habib passion and good willingness to serve and reach the whole society out of the church's wall, with a strong vision to show and present the practical God's love to the whole creation, especially with the marginalized, vulnerable, and less fortunate people who live in very poor and less impoverished communities. SEOS, from its inception, aim is combating poverty and improving the quality of life for poor and marginalized people, building resilient societies, communities, groups, individuals, and also increase the accepting for the people who are different from each other, to be able together to achieve sustainable, equitable, and inclusive development for the whole. Back to the Ferdinand questions, what our values? Actually, I picked 5 from a long list, which I feel it's really relevant to our talk. We are for the whole nation, for the whole people, without any discrimination based on their backgrounds, social classes, religion, gender, sex, color, ethnicity, whatever the differences are, it don't care. We are for all of them because all of us are the creation of God. 2, we believe in empowerment. So we would like to go for the journey, the empowerment and organizing people in more sustainable local organization to help and support the people. They don't have voices heard, to be heard carefully. Third, the full participation in life. So all the people, they have to participate and engage. Then create inclusive society for more inclusion. Discipleship. So believe so much in discipleship, and by having that, we have a strong program for building the institutional capacities, working with smaller NGOs, and enhancing the volunteerism.
Thank you very much for sharing about your core values of justice, and also it includes, I think, resilience and always being centered around the people, rooted in your faith. This leads me to my next question. Are you facing any obstacles in implementing this faith-based approach rooted in your faith in your practical work? And how does the Muslim majority society view you as a Christian organization with these faith values?
If you notice by our name, it's Coptic Evangelical Organization for Social Services. So from the first statement that we are Christian and working for the whole society, which the majority, as you mentioned, Ferdinand, are Muslim. But so people, they think that we are going to evangelize them. Why you are here? Why you live in the villages? Why you come with your projects to be implemented within a villages could be include 90% of our people is Muslim. So the magic word is trust, because our aim and our actions are the same. Our talks and our actions are the same. We are for the people, the whole people. So building the trust is a magic word, and showing the reality from day to day, and building the repetition, which ensure that we are for the whole and only for improving their quality of life. This makes the life easy. Second, economic issues. People sometimes you feel like, okay, you are in you have money and you have projects, just to go for a charity. No, we are for development, for building the resilience community, for building people's ability to claim their rights. So the confusion between charity and development, and of course the basic needs, it's something also considered an obstacle.
Thank you very much, dear Marguerite. I think what you said is valid not only for your case in Egypt, but for so many other faith-based organizations all over the globe. With my next question, I would like to move towards the promised practical approaches that I was talking about in the beginning. Having had the pleasure to work with you so many years now in Egypt, I learned that Egypt is facing many climate changes, such as droughts, extreme heat waves, shifted precipitation patterns, and floods. So my next question goes to you, Mr. Magid. Given this reality, and while working with people on the ground, how do you practically empower them to independently produce their own safe food in the face of these climate changes?
صباح الخير. الهيئة تولي اهتمام كبير بتنمية المجتمعات الريفية في مصر، لأنها تدرك حجم المجتمعات الريفية. سكان المجتمعات الريفية في مصر يمثلوا 55% من سكان مصر.
So CS gives. CIS gives special importance to the comprehensive rural development, where rural inhabitants comprise around 55% of total Egyptian population.
والقطاع الزراعي هو العمود الفقري في التنمية الريفية. 25% من اللي بيعملون في القوى العاملة في مصر هم بيعملوا في القطاع الزراعي.
And of course, the rural areas are the agriculture is the spine of the rural comprehensive development, because the people working in the rural sector comprise around 25% of the total work power in Egypt.
وبسبب ده الهيئة درست المجتمعات وحددت التحديات، وكان على رأسها في عادات وموروث كبير من الممارسات الزراعية الخطأ اللي بيمارسوها المزارعين بتأثر على قدرتهم على مواجهتهم لأزمات التغير المناخي والأحداث الأضرار بتاعة التغير المناخي.
Hence, CIS had to study and explore the challenges that were faced by the Egyptian rural communities. And on the top of the list were some inherited traditions, agricultural traditions, that needed a lot of adaptation to be able to mitigate the climate changes.
التحدي الآخر كمان مزارعينا في أغلبيتهم اللي بيشتغلوا في الزراعة هم صغار المزارعين، يمثلوا 85% من اللي بيعملوا في الزراعة.
Also, most of our farmers are smallholder farmers, and the smallholder farmers comprise around 85% of the total Egyptian farmers.
وعشان كده تجربة الهيئة ابتدأت من إزاي نجمع المزارعين ونحولهم من العمل الفردي إلى العمل الجماعي، إزاي يكونوا في روابط وكيانات يقدروا يواجهوا التحديات ويتكيفوا مع التغيرات المناخية.
So the starting point was to organize farmers to transform them from working individually to working collectively, so that they can face the challenges that they're having, and they can be a considerable force.
فتم بناء قدراتهم على ازاي يعملوا روابط فلاحين وجمعيات تعاونيه منظمه، تم بناء قدراتهم على ازاي يخططوا ويصنعوا قرار في امور حياتهم.
So they've been organized in groups within their communities, represented by elected committees, and these committees represented in farmers cooperatives at the level of the governorates that would organize the work between them.
وده كان أول خطوة تضمن استدامة التدخلات التنموية اللي بتعملها الهيئة في المجتمعات الريفية.
And this was the first step that would ensure the sustainability of CIS efforts within the rural communities.
لكن كان لازم نخش معاهم في الدعم الفني في الممارسات الزراعية، فكانت أول خطوة إزاي نوجههم إن هم يستخدموا المخلفات الزراعية بدل ما يحرقوها يحولوها لأسمدة عضوية من خلال نماذج الكمبوست.
But also we had to interfere with them technically. So one of the very important steps was to raise their awareness on how to transform their agricultural wastes into organic fertilizers through composting instead of burning them and harming the environment.
وإزاي نرفع وعيهم بمميزات استخدام الأسمدة العضوية.
And to raise their awareness on the importance and the benefits of replacing chemical inputs by organic fertilizers.
لوعيهم بأن لما ما تحرقش المخلفات الزراعية هنقلل انبعاثات الكربون في الهواء.
So raising their awareness on the fact that when you reduce burning agricultural wastes, you are hence reducing the carbon emissions in the surrounding environment.
الأسمدة العضوية تحفظ لك رطوبة المية في التربة، بالتالي نحافظ على المية.
The organic fertilizers maintains the humidity of the soil and hence preserves the soil characteristics.
إزاي يعرف إن التربة هي أكبر مخزن للكربون؟ فالأسمدة العضوية بتساعد على عدم انبعاث الكربون وتحفظها وتحتجزها في التربة، فكل ما زود الأسمدة العضوية قدر يحجز الكربون جوه التربة.
That the soil is the main reservoir for carbon. So the more you preserve the carbon within the soil, the more you are preserving its nutrients, and the organic fertilizers do this job.
نقلنا لوعيهم تجاه التغيرات المناخية وتأثيرها على الزراعة، فوجدنا إن هم معلوماتهم ضعيفة جدا، ما يعرفش إن التغير في درجة الحرارة والأمطار والأعاصير بتأثر عليه على الزراعة، وإزاي يبقى عنده معلومة مسبقة قبل الأحداث ما تحصل.
Then we moved a step forward with them and raised their awareness on climate change, because most of the farmers lacked information that climate change is even a factor affecting their cultivations.
وازاي لازم يطور سلالات التقاوي اللي بيستخدمها عشان يقدر يجيب اعلى انتاجيه عاليه.
And how that with climate changes occurring, they have to develop the strains of seeds they are using and the varieties of seeds they are using so that they can maintain good productivity.
اصناف مقاومه وتستحمل درجات الحراره وانخفاض الميه.
How to select varieties of seeds that are resistant to climate changes and to high degrees of temperature.
وبالفعل طبقنا معاهم ده في حقول إرشادية وحققنا زيادة في الإنتاجية واضحة في إنتاجهم.
And actually we have implemented these practical implementation with them in the field through pilot fields, and we have witnessed with them the improvement in productivity based on these interventions.
وده بسبب عملنا حاجة اسمها المدارس الحقلية.
Where we have implemented something called farmers' field schools.
25 مزارع في الحقل بيجتمعوا مسيحي ومسلم بيشتغلوا على قضية واحدة على تحسين إنتاجية القطاع الزراعي.
So 25 farmers in each field schools come together, Muslims and Christians, and they all have the same concern, which is to improve their productivity and overcome climate changes they are facing.
مدرسة يعني في مدرس ومعناه في منهج وفي مدرسين.
Having a school means we have students, we have a tutor, and we have a curriculum.
وبالتالي في تماسك وحالة اجتماعية تمت بينهم وتبادل خبرات في معلومات زراعية.
Hence, a state of cohesion is taking place between these farmers and the tutors, and collaboration is taking place with them.
بس كان لازم تستمر عملية الإرشاد الزراعي معاهم.
But the idea of agricultural extension had to be sustained some way or the other.
وكان لازم نجيب لهم أجهزة تساعدهم على التوقع والتنبؤ بالتغير المناخي.
And we had to provide them with some smart solutions that would help them expect or forecast the climate.
فعملنا محطات لرصد التغير في الطقس.
So we introduced climate forecast stations.
وكانت هنا علامة استفهام. المحطات بتطلع درجات، بتطلع درجة حرارة وقياس اتجاه رياح. الفلاح الصغير هيفهم ايه من المعلومة ديت؟
And we had to deal with the fact that these stations only provide digital informations in the form of numbers. So the speed of wind, the temperature. So how can these digital information be translated into actual information to benefit the farmer?
فكان لازم نعمل وسيلة جديدة، هو التحول الرقمي. اتعمل موبايل ابلكيشن اسمه المرشد الذكي بيقدم المعلومات والإرشادات للمزارعين في كل وقت وفي كل لحظة هو محتاجها.
So we had to introduce some digitalization to the agricultural extension, and we introduced a mobile app called Murshid Zaki, which is in English the smart extensionist, to help the small farmers translate the climate change information into actual advices that they can make use of in their cultivations.
وأدعوكم نشاهد الخبرة بتاع المرشد الذكي في فيلم صغير.
And we invite you to a short reel on testimonial on the Murshid Zaki mobile app.
Thank you. So if we could have the video now.
لتمكين الفلاحين من مواجهة التغيرات المناخية وكمان التكيف معها لزيادة إنتاجية المحاصيل، ابتكرت الهيئة القبطية الإنجيلية للخدمات الاجتماعية بالتعاون مع مركز معلومات تغير المناخ بوزارة الزراعة المرشد الذكي، تطبيق إلكتروني تفاعلي بسيط بيتصل بمحطات رصد جوية، ومن خلال مادة غنية أعدها متخصصين بيوجه الفلاح بإرشادات بسيطة.
في 2017 لما نزلنا وقعدنا مع اهالينا من المزارعين اكتشفنا ان هم ما عندهمش معلومه خالص على ان فعلا الطقس مأثر على المحصول بتاعه. فهو كان فاهم ان هو كل ما يزود سمات، كل ما يحط كيماويات، الانتاجيه تزيد. فكانوا بيتكلفوا تكاليف باهظه من السماد والكيماويات، وفي الاخر الانتاج ما بيزيدش والمحصول في خساره. فابتدينا نوفر حوالي 4 محطات في محافظه بني سويف وفي محافظات المنيا، كل محطه بتغطي 50 كيلو متر مربع. المحطات دي بتديني درجة الحرارة، اتجاه الرياح، كمية الأمطار، بتديني رصد للتغير في الطقس. الفلاح لما يخش على المرشد الذكي بيخش يسجل اسمه، منطقته، المحصول اللي هيزرعه، وبيحدد هو في قرية ايه، وبناء على المعلومات اللي بيدخلها كمان بنطلب منه يدخل لنا نوع التربة ونظام الري عشان نقدم له إرشاد مطابق لظروفه. مش فكرة بس درجة الحرارة، لا، لما يبقى في درجة حرارة هو يعمل ايه، لما يبقى في متوقع مطر هو يعمل ايه.
طفرة كبيرة حس بيها الفلاحين والفلاحات في حجم محاصيلهم وجودتها بعد استخدام التطبيق، ومن ضمنهم وفاء عاطف.
جوزي يروي من هنا والرياح والهواء تقوم يوجع الجمح يرجد، ما كانش بيجيب محصول. ففي الفترة دي تعبنا، نزلنا المرشد الذكي على الموبايل بمساعدة ابني في البيت لأن أنا ماليش في التكنولوجيا وكده، فراح نزلهولي. لقيت هو بيوفر لي استشاريين كبار، وبيوفر لي بيقول لي الرياح النهارده بسرعة كام، أروي ولا مرويش، أسبخ إيه. فادني جدا. يعني السنة اللي هي السنة اللي قبل ما أعرف الموبايل أبليكيشن ده والمرشد الذكي، كان ال 18 جراد جابت 11 أردب، خسرنا كتير. جينا بعد المرشد الذكي ما دخل بيتنا وتعاملنا معاه، ال 18 جراد جابت 21، ففرق معانا كتير.
Thank you very much. If we could go back. Thank you, Margit, for this very insightful talk on specific adaptation technologies that you're using with Muslim and Christian farmers. Talking about climate changes in Egypt, I think we can't not talk about the question of water. So my next question goes to Ms. Rania. How is the water situation in Egypt?
Actually, Egypt depends for 90% of its needs of fresh water from the River Nile. And when we talk about the needs, we talk about the household and drinking water needs and irrigation water needs for agriculture. Actually, and due to climate changes, the water flow in the Nile is very negatively affected, and we are actually starting to face water poverty in Egypt. That's why if this proceeds and if this increases, the priority, of course, will go to the domestic and the household needs, which will negatively affect the irrigation water and hence the agricultural production. So some solutions had to be found in order to overcome this, in order not to affect agriculture, which is the main responsible sector for our food security.
Thank you. That sounds quite grim, of course, in a country that is basically just arable along the Nile. So you are already hinting at solutions. So maybe you can share a bit about these solutions that you worked on as CEOS.
Yes, CEOS is introducing demonstrative environmental models for small farmers to be able to replicate in their agricultural lands, and those models would rationalize the use of water. For example, the installation of drip irrigation networks in the agricultural lands. And these drip irrigation networks are based on solar energy, so they use clean energy, so we are not harming the environment, and at the same time rationalizing the use of water. Also, we are introducing the greenhouses, which are also responsible for the vertical scaling up of agricultural land, and at the same time they are also depending on drip irrigation, so also rationalizing the use of water. So these are two main interventions that CEOS is introducing to small farmers and raising their capacities and skills for them to implement and replicate in their lands.
Thank you very much. And in this work, have you faced any challenges or obstacles, and then how did you overcome those?
Yes, of course, there is very important obstacle, which is the cost of implementing such models, because such models are very, very expensive for a single smallholder farmer to implement in his agricultural land. So hinting again at what Magid has been saying on the collective work of farmers and organizing them in groups. We are trying to implement the same with them to help them apply such models. So farmers are encouraged to implement such models collectively in their adjacent pieces of land, so they would contribute together in implementation of one drip irrigation network that serves the land of all of them, and so they share the cost. Also, we are helping them to implement covered tunnel cultivations, as we see in this picture, which is a demonstration of greenhouses, which is so huge to be implemented in small agricultural lands. So we are introducing this model of application, which is the covered tunnels, that is also operated with drip irrigation and vertical expansion. So these are two very important models, and actually we have implemented such models with farmers already, and they are proving to be successful.
Thank you, dear Ania, for sharing. So now let us move from your rights-based climate adaptation work, which is driven by your faith Christian values, towards the interfaith side of your work that was also promised in the beginning. So my next question goes to you, dear Heba. As a Christian minority in Muslim majority country, in how far is interfaith work relevant to empowering communities to face climate changes?
اوكي، صباح الخير. يعني انا في البدايه سعيده ان انا اكون موجوده بقدم خبره الهيئه في العلاقه بين الدين او الايمان وقضايا المناخ.
Good morning, everybody, and I'm very happy to be here with you and to introduce CS's experience in combining the work of faith and religions with climate issues.
يمكن مش كتير مننا راح مصر او يعرف طبيعه المجتمع المصري، لكن اللي عايزه اقوله ان الدين واحد من العوامل الهامه اللي بتاثر في حياه وسلوك وثقافه الناس في مصر.
That's okay. Maybe a lot of you haven't visited Egypt before, but it's important to let you know that religion is one of the very important aspects in Egypt and one of the very important factors affecting the Egyptian people in Egypt. Okay.
يمكن من أكتر المساحات اللي الدين بيأثر فيها هي العلاقات بين الناس، خاصة العلاقات بين المختلفين دينياً.
One of the areas that religion affects greatly in Egypt is the relationship between people, especially the relationship between the different others.
بالتبعية القيادات الدينية كمان لهم نفس التأثير اللي للتعليم، لأن هم اللي بيقدموا التعليم الديني، فهم لهم تأثير مباشر على الناس في مصر.
So it goes without saying, of course, that religious figures and religious leaders are very influential and very effective on the Egyptian population because they are the ones who convey and disseminate the religious learning.
إذا القيادات دول استخدموا تعليم الدين بشكل سليم وكان عندهم تفسيرات سليمة ليهم، ده بيقود إلى علاقات جيدة وإلى تعاون وإلى دفع التنمية في المجتمع.
So as long as those leaders use positive approaches and use beneficial approaches that are correct to help their communities, the more the Egyptian communities are on the right track in terms of relationships and attitudes and everything.
والعكس صحيح بالتأكيد، إذا كانوا هم كمان بيقدموا تعليم في نوع من التشدد والتعصب وخطابات كراهية، ده غالباً هيقود إلى إنه التنمية في المجتمع ده تكون بتقل أو مش بتتطور على الأقل.
And of course, the vice versa is true. So the more they convey extremism, violence, hateful religious discourse, the more we will be underdeveloped in our countries.
انتبهت الهيئة من فترة طويلة من التسعينات إلى النقطة دي وإلى أهمية أن يكون في حوار حقيقي بين القيادات الدينية المسلمين والمسيحيين في مصر.
CUS noticed this since a very long time, since the early 90s, and hence to the importance of having mutual dialogue between the Christian and Muslim religious leaders.
وأهمية تمكينهم عشان يكونوا زي ما شرحت مرجو في البداية عوامل تغيير إيجابيين في المجتمع المصري.
And the importance of empowering them to be important agents of change in the Egyptian community.
خاصة إنه القيادات الدينية جمهورهم كبير، يعني بيسمعهم شباب وبيسمعهم سيدات ومتعلمين وغير متعلمين.
Especially that religious leaders have huge audience, so they are targeting a huge variety of categories of people such as men, women, educated, uneducated, youth, children.
وعلشان يكون الحوار له طابع مؤسسي فنضمن انه بيستمر فتره طويله وانه فعلا بيكون له تاثير حقيقي على الارض، كان لازم يكون في شراكه قويه مع المؤسسات الدينيه في مصر الاسلاميه والمسيحيه.
So we had to build relationships with the head religious institutions in Egypt, Islamic and Christian.
يمكن في الصوره اللي حضراتكم بتشوفوها هتشوفوا الدكتور أندريا زكي هو رئيس الهيئه الانجيليه اللي احنا بنمثلها النهارده ورئيس الطائفه الانجيليه وكمان وزير الاوقاف اللي بيكون تحت مظله الوزاره دي كل الشيوخ والواعظات اللي بيكونوا في المساجد. هم كرمزين من لقاده المؤسسات كان لازم يدوا رساله ان احنا متضامنين ومتعاونين من اجل حوار فعال بين المسلم والمسيح.
So as you can see in this photo, it features Reverend Dr. Andrea Zaki, who is the head, the president of CIS, and at the same time the president of the Protestant churches of Egypt, and at the same time the Minister of Endowment. The Ministry of Endowment heads all the sheikhs and mosques and the Islamic religious leaders in Egypt.
لسنوات طويلة ابتدينا نجمع القيادات الإسلامية والمسيحية، الشيوخ، القساوسة، الواعظات، الخادمات في مجموعات منتشرة عبر محافظات مصر عشان يكون بينهم حوار مبني على أو في مساحة من التدريب والتعبير الآمن عن الرأي.
So for long years we have formed groups of Egyptian Muslim and Christian leaders to come together, to collaborate together, and to implement initiatives in their communities that would help in the sustainable development of the communities.
لما ابتدينا مؤخرا نعرف عن مشكلات المناخ وقضايا البيئة وابتدى ده يبقى صوت عالي إن فعليا في خطر قادم واعتمادا على التأثير اللي عملوه القيادات الدينية دول في قضايا السلام وفي قضايا العيش المشترك عبر السنوات اللي فاتت، قلنا إن احنا لازم نتوقف هنا ونشوف ازاي ممكن نعمل أفضل استثمار للقيادات الدينية وتأثيرهم علشان يكون في تأثير خاص بيهم في قضايا البيئة وقضايا المناخ.
So with the emergence of the climate and environment issues and their importance that are prevailing nowadays, we thought of how to invest in the relationships that we've built between the Muslim and Christian leaders, to invest in their collaboration and in their working together to serve the communities towards helping these issues.
الحقيقة الموضوع في البداية ما كانش سهل لأنه إيه علاقة القيادات الدينية بالموارد والانبعاثات والمية والتربة؟
It wasn't easy actually at the beginning because you could hardly find the relationship between religious leaders and religions and so on and climate and natural resources and water and land.
فكانت البداية إن إحنا يكون في حوار حوالين البيئة وقضايا البيئة مع متخصصين عشان هم كمان يقدروا يفهموا هي إيه المشكلة وإيه الخطر القائم بسبب التغيرات المناخية.
So we started with organizing sessions and meetings for them, for the religious leaders with environmental experts to try and convey to them what do we mean by climate issues and environmental issues and so on.
لما نورت المعرفة الخاصة بقضايا البيئة أذهانهم ابتدوا ينتقلوا إلى مرحلة تانية، يعني إذا إحنا عايشين في بيت واحد اسمه مصر أو اسمه العالم وفي خطر قادم علينا، إيه اللي إحنا ممكن نعمله مع بعض كقيادات دينية عشان نحمي المجتمع بتاعنا من التغيرات المناخية.
So they started to be aware that yes, we are living together in one country, that is one country among hundreds of other countries in the world. So we have to come together because if the climate problems affect us, they are going to affect us all, Muslims and Christians all over the world.
أول خطوة أخذوها إن هم رجعوا للكتب الدينية اللي بيتعلموا منها، رجعوا للقرآن الكريم ورجعوا للإنجيل.
So the first step they've taken is that they have reverted to the religious books, the religious texts in Holy Quran and in the Bible.
ابتدوا يدوروا تاني ويفكروا تاني ايه الآيات والنصوص الدينية اللي بتحثنا على حماية خليقة الله والعناية بيها.
So they started exploring the texts in the religious books on the specific texts that urge us to protect the creation of God represented in the environment and in the natural resources.
اكتشفوا ان في آيات كتيرة جدا وكانوا بس بيحفظوها في المساجد والكنائس بيحفظوها للأطفال، لكن ما كانش في وقفة عند ايه معنى الآيات دي بالنسبة لنا.
So they found out that there are a lot of texts actually referring to the environment and natural resources that they have memorized, and they help the children in the churches and mosques to memorize, but without taking it to the further dimension of the relationship, the actual relationship and meaning of these verses.
فاستخرجوا كل الآيات دي، كل النصوص دي، وتبادلوا المعرفة حولها وحفظوها لبعض إذا جاز التعبير، واتفقوا إنهم يحطوها في وثيقة تكون جايد لكل القيادات الدينية اللي ممكن تكون بتعلم عن العلاقة بين الإيمان، سواء الإيمان المسيحي أو الإيمان الإسلامي، بقضايا البيئة.
So they combined all these verses in one document, and they have exchanged together the different verses in the Bible and in the Holy Quran. And they started to look at them from a different perspective together.
ثم تحركوا خدوا خطوة تانية بقى، إنه إحنا مش هنتوقف بس عند مجرد التعليم، لكن هنبتدي الجمهور بتاعنا اللي بنعرف نتواصل معاه وعندنا قدرة على التأثير فيه، هيبتدوا يعملوا بعض المبادرات وبعض الأنشطة مع الشباب أو الأطفال أو السيدات اللي هم بيسمعوهم في المساجد أو في الكنائس.
Then they took it one step forward and started to implement actual initiatives on the ground with their audience of children and youth in the mosques and in the churches.
الراهبة اللي حضراتكم شايفينها في الصورة واحدة من المشاركين في الوثيقة دي، عملت مبادرة مع مجموعة من الأطفال في مدرسة هي بتشتغل فيها. استخدمت آية مشهورة في الكتاب المقدس، طوبى للرحماء لأنهم يرحمون، لكن هي قالت هنخلي الشعار بتاعنا طوبى لمن يزرع شجرة في مصر.
So we are seeing a photo of an Egyptian nun from Upper Egypt that has adopted an initiative with children in the church, and she has this motto for the initiative that blessed he is who plants a tree.
كمان في بعض الأماكن الشيوخ والأسوس مع بعض ابتدوا يتواصلوا مع الأطفال ويعملوا معاهم مبادرات كبيرة للتوعية، ازاي واستخدموا آيات من الكتاب المقدس ومن الإنجيل. استخدموا مثلا إن المبذرين من إخوان الشياطين علشان يبتدوا يعلموهم ازاي نقتصد في الغذاء، ازاي نقتصد في المية، ازاي يكون عندنا حرص على الموارد اللي ربنا اداها لنا.
And in some areas, sheikhs and priests collaborated together and adopted initiatives with children, teaching them on how to rationalize the use of food and to avoid the losses in food.
كمان بعض من الشيوخ ابتدوا يتواصلوا مع المؤسسات الحكومية، يعني مش بس من خلال المساجد والكنائس، لكن كمان ابتدوا يروحوا للمؤسسات الحكومية زي شركات المية مثلا، اللي هو الكيانات المسؤولة عن إدارة المية في مصر.
Some sheikhs also adopted the initiatives of communicating with the Egyptian authorities, like for example the drinking water company.
ابتدى يتكلم ازاي ان احنا كشركة مياه مش بس بنحافظ على الأنظمة الخاصة بالمياه، لكن ازاي ممكن نقدم توعية كمان للناس اللي بيترددوا على شركة المياه يوميا عشان يعملوا الإجراءات الخاصة بيهم.
And to collaborate with these authorities on how to raise awareness of people that go there regularly for services, on how to save on water and how to deal and rationalize the use of water.
بعض الندوات دي كان الشيخ والقسيس بيجتمعوا مع بعض، يعني الصورة حضراتكم شايفينها دي في كنيسة في الأقصر، المحافظة الجنوبية يعني في مصر. الشيخ والقسيس بيتكلموا مع الأولاد عن علاقتنا بالطبيعة، وإزاي إنه مش بس الكتاب المقدس والقرآن بيكلمونا عن علاقتنا بالله وعلاقتنا ببعض، لكن كمان علاقتنا بالطبيعة اللي بنعيش فيها.
So also some of the sheikhs and priests collaborated together to give sessions for the children together inside the mosque or together inside the church. So this picture, for example, was for a session in Luxor Governorate in Upper Egypt, and the priests and the sheikh together talking to the children on the importance of environment and preserving natural resources and so on.
هختم بجملة كانوا كل القيادات الدينية واخدينها شعار في المبادرات، إنه إحنا بنحافظ على خليقة الله اللي هي البيئة من أجل خليقة الله اللي هي الأجيال القادمة.
I will conclude with the motto that all the religious leaders involved in these initiatives took as a motto for them, that we are preserving the creation of God, that is the natural resources and the environment, for the benefit and favor of the creation of God, that is the future generations.
شكراً جزيلاً.
Thank you.
thank you indeed, dear Heba, for this showcasing this impressive work, and that shows how long-standing building up of trust can really lead to effective results facing the climate crisis and answering the cry of creation. Now, I had promised you a quick round of questions, so I would like to open up to the floor. If any of you has questions to the panel, there will be a microphone available. Any thoughts, comments, or questions? Okay, there's one. Do we have a mic?
Hello, thank you very much for this really interesting session. I would like to know if this is your first time at a COP, what it means for you to be here at COP28 as a local civil society organization coming from Egypt, and also what it means for you to have a faith pavilion here, and if you have been at previous COPs, how this experience in the pavilion maybe changes or is different from experiences you've had climate conferences. Thank you.
So allow me to answer this. Actually, this is not the first time for COP. We attended the COP27 in our country, in Sharm el-Sheikh. And actually, it was a great opportunity for us. It was the first one. We learned a lot. We exposed for different experiences. And we had that time booth. So we could actually be able to present our work. And from that event and this attendance, we decided that we'll go ahead. And thanks God, because we got the accreditation from UNFCCC. So now we are accredited to be able to attend for the other COPs. This year, it's first time for us to in the blue zone. So it's a very pleasant event to be there. And actually, we couldn't have this without the help of Bread for the World. So we are very grateful for our partnership with Bread for the World, who gave us the access to be here and to conduct this very important session with Faith Pavilion, because we are, as a faith-based organization, it's our willingness to show and present our values and our principles, which came from our faith.
Thank you very much. Now we are already close to closing this session, so that's a good time maybe for asking my fellow panelists for closing statements. Please be quite brief, maybe 2 or 3 sentences. The question would be, how do you imagine a climate-just future in Egypt? And what key things are needed to achieve this future? So maybe if you could focus on the key things that you see that Egypt needs, or that your societies and communities need in order to face the future climate challenges.
I will say 3 points very quickly. One, we need to have more equitable and accessible financing opportunities. We need to having more affordable global, local climate innovation solutions. We need to create more encouraging and safe ecosystem for youth entrepreneurs and the startups in the field of environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Then the floor is for Heba.
يعني أنا هتكلم في نقطتين سريعاً. أول حاجة إحنا محتاجين نهتم بتمكين الفئات الفاعلة اللي عندها جمهور كبير بيسمعها زي القيادات الدينية، لكن كمان الإعلاميين، القيادات الأكاديمية، لأنهم مؤثرين جداً في الناس اللي بتسمعهم.
I have 2 points. The first point is that we have to work on raising the awareness of the really influential people in the communities, such as religious leaders and also media professionals, because these 2 categories have large audiences in the society.
النقطة الثانية إن إحنا نحسن استخدام الرصيد الديني لصالح حماية البيئة.
The second point is to invest in our religious identity in favor of the environment.
Over to you, Rania.
Okay, Egypt is a country with 70% of its population of children and youth. So focus on youth and children in the universities, in the schools, in the churches, in the mosques, because they are the futures. And if they have climate awareness and environment awareness, we are going to be a country with better environment and better climate awareness.
That's really true. And last words go to Margit.
Thank you. أنا كنت وجهة نظري من خلال تجربة ملهمة بتنفذ في مصر قائمة على شراكة كل الأطراف. أنا بدعو كل الأطراف اللي ليهم فعالية في القطاع الزراعي للمشاركة. وده هيكون من خلال تجربة بننفذها في مصر اسمها مبادرة إزرع. هي مبادرة ملهمة قائمة على التعاون من كل الأطراف في القطاع الزراعي. البحوث والدكاترة والجامعات تعمل دراسات لكي تساعد المزارعين على التكيف مع التغيرات المناخية.
So I'm referring to a very important initiative that's taking place now in Egypt called ISRA initiative, مبادرة ISRA or Cultivate initiative. That is a collaborative initiative between all the actors in the field of agriculture.
آلاف من المتطوعين من الشباب المتطوعين في الجمعيات الأهلية بتقوم بتوعية المزارعين من خلال رسائل توعية في المدارس الحقلية.
So we have the experts from the Ministry of Agriculture and the universities, experts and consultants, collaborate with thousands of volunteers from the communities that go into the fields and work with the farmers.
500,000 من الصغار الفلاحين بيطبقوا الممارسات الزراعية الذكية اللي قائمة على التكيف مع التغيرات المناخية.
Working with 500,000 small farmers in the field that are applying smart good agricultural practices.
بالعمل الجماعي سوف نواجه التغيرات المناخية.
With collective work we will actually face climate changes.
Thank you for these long and short last words. Very inspiring. Let me also extend a big thank you to the organizers of the Faith Pavilion, of course, the Muslim Council of Elders, UNEP, for making this unique space possible here at COP, which is so much needed to remind the world of the spiritual foundation for driving climate action in this world, because a lot of people are driven by their faith. And thanks, of course, to the esteemed panelists. And please, I invite you to join me in giving them a warm round of applause.
Thank you, shukran. So we will have a short break.